What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Red Zone Sports here, going through the 14-game Saturday main slate, Week 1 college football on DraftKings. Hopefully, everybody has had a good start to the season. Last night was a pretty wild slate. I'm doing this show on Friday here. To start the season off, man, there were some massive scores. We knew it would be 11-game slate last night. A lot of FCS matchups, a lot of blowouts, UCF, you name it. Arizona State game we were on, and then they were looking good, and then legit sandstorm blew in, delayed that game multiple hours. Gotta love college football, man. So hopefully everybody had a good slate, but we are going to talk about Saturday's main slate starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. So before we get going here, don't forget to subscribe, hit that thumbs up if you can. Helps us out in a massive way. Really appreciate it. And as I always say, if I miss somebody here on the show, if I have somebody wrong, drop it in the comments. Yesterday, we had somebody do that, talk me off a player, which was freaking awesome. I really appreciate it. It's really hard to get information out of a lot of these teams early on. So anything that can help us all win, greatly appreciated. So let's go ahead and jump to it. Like I mentioned, we have a massive 14-game slate right out of the gates here. I think the one thing that jumps out, like anything early in the season, there's a few games that don't even have lines on it because it's going to be such a blowout, which we'll talk about. And then we've got a bunch of games that are expected to be huge blowouts, but there is lines. So let's go ahead and just run down these real quick. Boston College, Northern Illinois. BC's an 8.5-point favorite. Little interest there, 29-team implied total. Virginia at Tennessee, or Virginia and Tennessee. That one is a 28-point favorite to the Vols. 42-point team total there. Colorado at TCU, which is the talk of the town. TCU is currently a 20.5-point favorite with a 64 over-under. 41-point total for TCU, 22 for Colorado. Oklahoma, 35.5-point favorites against Arkansas State with a gigantic 47-point team total there. Kentucky and Ball State. Kentucky's 25.5-point favorites, 38 total. Iowa, 23.5-point favorite over Utah State, and they have a 33 implied team total, which I know is kind of hilarious to see. I had to double take that they had a team total in the 30s, no matter who they're playing. Michigan versus ECU. Without Jim Harbaugh, they are still a 36-point favorite with a 43 total. Ole Miss and Mercer, no line. Oregon, Portland State, no line. Texas is a 5-touchdown favorite over Rice with a 47-team total. Indiana, Ohio State. The Buckeyes are a 30-point favorite. Buffalo at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a 28-point favorite. Tennessee State at Notre Dame. There's no line on that game. And Boise State at Washington, where the Huskies are a 14-point favorite there. So how are we going to break down the slate? Well, I think I talked about it on the Thursday show or for the Thursday slate. One thing I'm going to try to do is not guess as much as I can. Obviously, these numbers are as accurate as they possibly can be, but I'm going to do what I think is the smart play in terms of what teams to target and what games to target, and play it a little bit conservative and safe there. What does that mean? I'm going to be targeting the big guns, point and simple. I think the one thing that allows us to do this, and I'm sure a lot of other shows have talked about it, is the pricing on DraftKings is all screwed up to start the year. So there's a lot of teams, which we'll talk about, that are my favorites that you would think like, wow, how are you going to be able to stack Tennessee and Washington? You can do it because there's a lot of value pieces based on mispricing earlier in the year. They have to kick these pricings out. And then teams release depth charts, let's say, and it's just wrong. It's just wrong on what they guessed. So there's a lot of opportunity here for us to still target some of these big favorites, some of these spots. You can target some of the bigger quarterbacks, and you can get away with it because there's some mispricing at running back, especially this week. And then a lot of receivers kind of in that 5K and below that have major upsides. So I think that's the way I'm going to really play this slate, which is good because I feel confident about it. The bad thing is I think everybody else is going to be doing the same thing. So if you see shows out there talking about, oh, this guy from Tennessee State or, this guy from Ball State or Arkansas State, hey, more power to you guys. If you have something and you think there's an opportunity there for a team that's trailing, go get it. Like, definitely do it. I'm just not going to be really in that space. I'm going to stick with what I know and let it ride here to start the year. So, with that being said, my top 5 stacks for this week are going to be Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas, Washington, and Notre Dame. Tennessee, Joe Milton comes in with obviously really high expectations. He is priced up, obviously, 8,700 this week. But he's got 3 very cheap or somewhat cheap options at the receiver position. And Brew McCoy, let's see, Squirrel White. I mean, how could you not play a guy named Squirrel White? And then Ramal Keaton. All 3 of those guys are priced very effectively and allow us to get that stack pretty comfortably overall. Oklahoma, you've got Dylan Gabriel. I have Oklahoma on here because I think they're obviously, after a whole year of taking crap, a whole offseason taking crap, heading into SEC, they want to make a statement this year and bounce back in a major way. I think they absolutely come out and pound Arkansas State here. So Dylan Gabriel, absolutely on my radar, as is Drake Stoops. And then we will get to him a little bit, but Andrell Anthony is the guy that I'm looking at. He was named a starter on the opening depth chart. He's only 4,800. He's a transfer, or not a transfer, I believe. But he's a guy who's kind of worked his way and had a really good offseason into that starting lineup. I think it's very easy to stack 1 or 2 of these guys and just move on. Texas is another one. They have really high expectations. The hype train is through the roof on these guys, like it is every year. Are they back is the question of everybody's opening week. Let's find out. We're not going to find out this week because they're going to smack Rice. But Quinn Ewers, Heisman hopes, playoff hopes, national championship hopes down there in Austin. I think Quinn Ewers comes out with Arch Manning kind of in the lingering shadows and balls out here. So I like Quinn Ewers quite a bit this weekend. Xavier Worthy is obviously the number 1 back there. No Bijan Robinson. I think Texas leans a little bit more into the passing game this year. And then they got the transfer, let me get his name right. Sorry. Adonai Mitchell from Georgia, 5,500. Man, that's just too cheap for these guys. In a game that they have an implied, 47 team total. I mean, it's very possible that both of these guys eat, and there's some groundwork being done. Texas is going to score a lot of points, even if they get pulled early in this one, halftime, third quarter. I expect them to get their value. We saw that with UCF yesterday. John Reese Plumlee absolutely dominated in the first half, had a little bit of a showing in the third, and he was done, but it didn't matter. He had already hit value, was over 30 points, and he just move on and just cash it. So I think that's kind of what we're hoping here for this slate as well. Notre Dame, I mentioned, Sam Hartman. That offense looked really good last week versus Navy. I think he's got a few good receivers that are young and that are cheap and that we can start looking to stack, like Jaden Greathouse, who's an even 5K this week. Notre Dame is obviously still going to lean into the run game, but we saw with Sam Hartman, man, they are very comfortable throwing and opening this offense up, which is kind of a breath of fresh air for Notre Dame. And I think they try to build on that. They have a few really tough games coming up. Ohio State, I believe, being one of them here in the next week or two. I know people think that they, may just be out of this game early, but they are trying to build confidence and get these young receivers up and running before that matchup, and Sam Hartman comfortable in the offense. So don't be surprised again if they hang 40-50 this week. And then Washington, I talked about. Michael Penix had a phenomenal year last year. He's got all of his weapons back. Roma Dunes, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. These guys are primed and ready to rock and roll and make a run at the Pac-12 here. Returning coach, everything is in place for these guys to have a good start to the year. They have a little bit more of a challenging matchup versus Boise State than some of these other teams, which may not be the worst thing. I still think they have their way with Boise, but maybe we get a competitive 4-quarter game out of this one. So I'm kind of excited about this game. It's one of my favorites on the weekend, but I think the Washington side is where we want to be. I know Taylon Green is the quarterback for Boise. I just don't know if he's got the same upside quite as Washington does. And I think for 8,400, Michael Penix is in a very good spot price-wise. I think there's no reason to overthink it and take the other side of this game, in my opinion. So 2 other teams I have my eye on. Wisconsin. It's a new era up there in Madison. New era up there in Wisconsin. You've got Tanner Mordecai, who's transferred in. You've got a few receiving options, which we'll talk about. Wisconsin is a huge favorite over Buffalo. I think they want to come out with a bang and put the league on notice out there. And then the other one. I feel like everybody in the country has an opinion on this game. Maybe it's just my bias. Maybe I'm blinded to this. Maybe I am, but I'm going to go down with the ship here. I like Colorado. The TCU is favored to win this game by 3 touchdowns. Look, they're probably the better team top to bottom, but Dion completely overhauled this roster. They have his son, Shedeur Sanders, at $7K, which is very cheap for this slate based on what he has done at Jacksonville State. If he can kind of put up similar numbers, especially trailing in this matchup, I like him quite a bit. He's also got Xavier Weaver, Joe Horn Jr., and Travis Hunter, who will play both ways. I have some interest in these guys, especially on the skill side. I still think they lose this game by multiple touchdowns, but that's okay. For DFS, that's not really what we care about. I think Colorado is going to be running and gunning all day, and we could see some serious numbers put up by these guys. So that's kind of where I'm leaning in terms of stacks. Let me run through kind of my quarterback list here. Let me go ahead and pull it up. The one guy I didn't mention, which I'm sure everybody's kind of wondering why I didn't. Bo Nix. He is still in my quarterback player pool, but I'm not looking to really stack Bo Nix. Oregon notoriously is very hard to predict from a receiver standpoint and who it's going to be. We saw it even last year. You know, Bo Nix could run 2 or 3 scores in. He can throw a touchdown to 5 different guys. And if you have Bo Nix, but you have the wrong pairing, you're in trouble. Like, especially in some of these bigger tournaments on DraftKings, like, for me, I'd rather just take the raw Bo Nix points and move on if I'm going to do it. So he is up top at 10-1, the most expensive player on the slate, rightfully so. He's probably one of the Heisman favorites heading into this year. He's in a great matchup, but again, I don't feel great about it. I mean, he's going to put up numbers, no doubt, but this is a game very much he could be out by halftime against Portland State. So they should run Portland State off the field here. I just don't quite feel as good from a full stacking standpoint to do it. And then I talked about the other guys. Sam Hartman at 9,700, Dylan Gabriel 91, Tanner Mordecai 8,900 for Wisconsin, Joe Milton 8,700, Michael Penix at 84, Quinn Ewers at 77, and Shedeur Sanders at 7K. So kind of that Joe Milton, Michael Penix, Quinn Ewers is my favorite kind of like pricing point. That mid 8s and high 7s, I think those guys have huge potential here to go 25 to 35 points. And I don't see anybody else even at the top that's going to really blow you out of the water with that point. So if you look at it from a price standpoint, what are we doing here, right? Are you willing to pay an extra $1,500 for another, 7 points? That's something you got to figure out with your roster construction. But I think those guys have as much upside as some of the people up top. Moving on to running back, you've got Ray Davis transferring in, who I like quite a bit from into Kentucky at 7,100. The one thing I'm going to talk about both at receiver and I'll talk about at running back here, I might as well get it out of the way, is Ohio State. Haven't talked about them. I am very confident Ohio State wins this game really big. They're going to blow Indiana out. Very similar to Oregon with better pieces. I don't know where the production's coming from. They've got 2 running backs, Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, who are going to get touches. They may even have a 3rd running back get touches in this game. All 3 of them could very easily go for, let's just say, 65 yards, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Ohio State receivers, Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, 9,100, 7,400, and then you've got multiple guys behind that. Again, it's hard to pinpoint from a stacking standpoint at those price points to get it right. And it's very difficult. And on a slate like this, where I think there's going to be high scoring and a lot of blowouts, I don't think you necessarily need Ohio State to win this. I may be totally wrong here. Maybe, talking myself into it, maybe I'll throw like one full Ohio State stack in there and hope that it hits. But Marvin Harrison at, 90 yards and 2 touchdowns, that's a really awesome game. I don't know if that quite pays off the 9,100 price tag. So, yeah, he's got a phenomenal floor. He's got the highest ceiling on the slate in competitive games and the best receiver by far in the country. But at this price tag, this is DFS. You got to figure out if that makes sense for your lineup for this week. And I just think there's some other spots for a price savings that I can get close enough to not get left in the dust here. So that's kind of my Ohio State rant. Very similar to Oregon. Like I said, just with better pieces. I talked about Ray Davis I like at 7,100. This is the three that I think are going to be the most popular on the slate, and rightfully so. DraftKings completely mispriced this. It's Blake Corum, Braylon Allen, and Quinshon Judkins, 6,900, 6,700, 6,600. Pretty hard to fade those guys. They're some of the best running backs in the country at very reasonable price tags. They're not going to be this price tag again, probably all year. You're going to see these guys all 7K and up, as my guess, starting next week. So do with that what you will. If you want to fade and get different, go ahead. But I think those three are pretty much locked into most of my lineups, let's say. Jabari Small, Tennessee, I think you can take some shots on at 5,800. Caleb Johnson for Iowa, 5,700. He's the lead back there. Iowa's got a 30-point implied team total. I don't know. They say they're going to open it up, but I don't really believe Iowa when they say that until I see it. CJ Baxter, 5,500. I know he is listed as a co-starter or like the second string behind the starter there in Texas, but he was the top running back recruit in the country, 5-star guy. He is going to get touches in this game. And I could see them getting him quite a bit of work, very similar to some of these other situations. Get these guys up to speed as quickly as possible and get them ready for league play coming up here in a few weeks. I think CJ Baxter has a chance to really blow up here in this game. So 5,500, I like that a lot. Imani Bailey for TCU, 5,400 is a guy that I have a lot of interest in. If you think that Colorado is going to get run out of the building, it's hard to see a path where he does not ball out and get a lot of exposure here in this game. Dylan Johnson for Washington at 5,200. Washington is very much a pass-happy team, but this guy comes from Mississippi State, so he's it's no surprise to him in an offense that's not built around the running game. He can catch the ball, so he's got ability there and upside there. And there's very possibly he can punch one or two in on the ground too. So those are the guys I mainly like. One guy to keep an eye on is Savion Wilkerson for Colorado. He's 3,800. He's a guy who transferred, played with Dion the last couple of years. He's not an every down back, but he's an absolute home run hitter. So I think there's there's something there. I don't know on this slate if it makes the most sense, but he's just a guy I wanted to talk about. Going back real quick, CJ Baxter, we talked about it last week. I think he's got the ability very similar to Zachariah Branch at USC in a different way, obviously, but similar to how USC wanted to get him up to speed and integrated into that offense as quickly as possible. I think CJ Baxter is that kind of talent. I think we're going to see the same type of thing out of Sark. So that's why I have CJ Baxter on there. Going to receivers, and we'll close this baby out. Ohio State, I talked about them. Still really good plays. If you can afford Marvin Harrison, I'll never try to talk you out of playing him. Abuka, same thing, 7,400. We talked about Adunes and McMillan, 7,300 and 6,900. They're expensive, but the quarterback is priced down a little bit, so it's doable. TCU, you got JoJo Earl, who transferred in. He's going to be their top guy at 6,900. Xavier Worthy at 6,600. Not really sure what DraftKings was doing here. I love that play. Jaden Thomas at Notre Dame at 6,600. Trey Harris at Ole Miss at 61. Xavier Weaver, we talked about, 5,600 for Colorado. Then you've got Adonai Mitchell at 55. Squirrel White, 55. Barian Brown is a guy who's going to have some play at Kentucky in that new revamped offense, so I like him a little bit. Stephon Cobbs for Boise State, if you're looking for a bring back to some of your stacks for the Washington side. Stephon Cobbs is 5,400. Chimere Dike for Wisconsin is 54. You got Drake Stoops at 53. Dane Key for Kentucky. He's the 1B there on the other side of that map or that offense. He's at 5,200. We talked about Jimmy Horn Jr., 5,200. Trayshawn Holden, if you want to go the Oregon route, he's 5,100. Will Pauling for Wisconsin's 51. Jaden Greathouse is 5K. You see what I mean? Like these guys, there's a lot of value in this 5K range if you want to go there and pay up elsewhere. Travis Hunter, again, I don't know how much he's going to play both ways. It's supposed to be smoking hot down in Dallas. I don't know if he's going to be able to do a full game both ways, but former number 1 overall recruit, he's going to play some offense. He's 4,900. I think Brew McCoy at 4,800 is one of the best plays of the day. Andrell Anthony won a starting job for Oklahoma at 4,800. Bryson Green, 4,600, named a starter at Wisconsin who transferred in. Aiden Williams, Ole Miss, 45. Ramel Keaton, 4,100. And then, I'm sorry, two guys I missed here. Jordan Watkins for Ole Miss, he's 4,900. And Ryan O'Keefe for Boston College is 6,100. So I think all those guys are going to be my kind of player pool heading into tomorrow. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to ping me right there, Notorious VJL on X or Twitter, whatever you call it now. And good luck, and we'll be back next time.